this is the size I'm working on. I'm just going to make it nice and simple. Got my walking foot on because the straight stitches is with the walking foot, and we just go very slow and we just decide our design as we quilt. I've got orange thread on the top and just white on the bottom. And after we do all our quilting, I will be adding all the embellishments and go through that step by step. And hopefully you'll enjoy it and try your own little piece. It doesn't have to be Halloween. It could be your favorite colors. It could be Christmas, be Easter, whatever. Do whatever inspires you. Would be my suggestion. Inspiration is always the best. So for quilting, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in the center, and as I go, I'll work this direction and this direction, and then that way we'll kind of even out the quilting as we go, because I don't like spray basting. I've tried it before and it's never been successful for me. And gums up your needle, but not as big of an issue. But what I do like to try, or just not a fan of spray basting, so I just let it float, and it's a small enough piece that we don't need to worry about it floating. So as I'm quilting here, I'm watching the line here and I'm matching it up here. The nice thing about when you do something like this, it doesn't necessarily end up perfect, but it does end up blending in nicely because there is so much movement, and it just, with all that movement, you don't focus on any one particular element of the quilt or the quilting. As luck would have it, I've gone and I've run out of the bottom bobbin thread, so I've re-oiled my machine and everything. And now I'm just going to pull that up and tuck it under. And then bury it. And then I can start my stitch right in the beginning, but I've just freshly oiled my machine. And I know every time I freshly oil my machine, one of the unfortunate things is it does bring up a lot of the oil from the bottom. So I never start off stitching right away. I always take a scrap piece of something and use up that oil until all my threads come out looking clean, neat, tidy. So growing up, I was not taught to oil the machine. Maybe my mother did that for us, so I never ran into that as a child, but this is something that I have experienced since I've bought this machine. So that's about 17 years now. Well, maybe not, but definitely love my machine. I'm not complaining that I have to oil it. I'm just saying it requires maintenance, just like everything else in life. So I've gone and I've done a double knot. If you're familiar with types of knots, it's a reef knot, right over left and under, left over right and under. It's one of my favorite knots. So I just take this and I'm going to bury my needle. I'm going to go with the line. I'm going to double check it's not showing through on this side. And because my threads are nice and short, I thread it after I've gone through. And this is probably the most difficult part. But you want your eye big enough to catch the two threads easily, and there are tools you can use. And unfortunately, I don't have that particular needle with me today. In this room. There we go, success with both threads. And then you just pull that through, lightly give it a tug till you get your knot, trim. And now I'm going to take my scrap fabric and get rid of the grease. And I will take you along as we go so you see what I mean. All right. Here is our thread. We can see I've started here, and it's just, you can tell by the color, it's just a little darker. And now I'm nice and clean at this end, so we can see the color change. And this is why I always have a scrap piece lying around after I've oiled my machine. Now, because I've gone and I've tied off, I can start the same spot, and I tend to drop my stitch, and because I'm getting old, my eyesight's getting bad, so it's right in where I can. I've got the walking foot, so it is harder to see with your walking foot. So there we go. And I just start off again. Oh, and make sure you're sewing on the correct side. So even with me, it's a lot of stop and start and learn as we go. Right? This is a little harder to see because it's orange on orange. Not as hard as black on black, though. That is one of the hardest things, is sewing black thread on black fabric. All right. Okay, so now I want to change things up because I don't want to have the same pattern just constantly going and going and going. It's not that appealing, and you do need the change to make it a little more dramatic and a little more interesting. So here we go. I'm going to change my pattern. And I am more of an organic quilter. I'm not somebody who likes geometric patterns. They just don't work for me. So in here, I don't know if I'm going to add details in quilting or if I'm going to add details in embellishment. I tend to just do my quilting first, and once my quilting is done, especially the basic presser walking foot designs where it's just the linear stuff, and I'll go back to just linear. my thread is buried, and I'm just going to double check you've got a really good view of that. Maybe not so much. Let's take you down and show a better view. So this is the back side because it's got the white thread on the back, but it shows you the overall quilting pattern with contrast thread. Now I've gone and done it with non-contrasting thread, so it's just very simple and subtle. I'm going to need to trim her up, square it up. I'm going to just make it a simple square this time round. The one back here, as you can see, I've got a little bit of a wave down at the bottom. It's not perfectly square. That was the look I was going for, but this time round, I'm just going to, you know, make it a nice simple rectangle, and we'll do that together, and then we'll decide how the embellishments go, and we'll go from there. So I've got my 16.5-inch ruler here to square us up. And remember, this is the top and this is the back. We do have to hit these points, so it looks like it's going to be about 10 by 11.5 when all is said and done. We've managed on this side, and we've managed well on that side. We can have a little bit extra not showing here because we're going to add our binding, and our binding always takes in at least a 1/4 inch, and I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a 1/4 inch binding. Normally on a quilt I do a 1/2 inch, but this time around I'm going to go and I'm going to do a 1/4 inch. And I haven't decided the color. Maybe I'll frame it in black, maybe I'll frame it in orange, maybe I'll frame it in purple. So now let's go on to the embellishments. And I'm going to start with, these is just dollar store beads. Sometimes some people feel that you have to have the real true art beads. So these ones aren't, they're probably, you know, a little lower class, but sometimes when you're just experimenting or if you're on a budget, dollar store stuff is completely appropriate. So don't let anybody talk you down because you choose to use the dollar store kits. They're fabulous. They're fabulous. They're always great for creativity, and you know, sometimes you don't have that money to spend, or sometimes it's not a project you want to spend that money on. It's an heirloom quilt, by all means, buy the best you can. If it's experiment, try anything. Here's just a little close-up of the beading that I've done and the spider's web that I've started. And I'm going to use some thinner embroidery floss right there. I'm going to separate it. I'll probably only do 2 at a time. And when I go to add the black beads, I'll show you how I do that. Gone and added the spider webs, and it's a bit of a metallic thread. And as you see, it's actually given it a little bit of a sheen, and it looks like dew in the morning or when you're looking at it. we've got, you know, that extra texture and color just to add dimensions to it. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to be applying my little beads, these ones, and I'm going to add them in a swooping line, and I'm going to add them in a straight line instead of, you know, spaced apart like this. First thing I need to do is find a bead that will go through the majority of the needles. Usually that is your Roxanne's. Yeah, so my Roxanne's will work. I'm going to go ahead and thread that, and I am also going to draw the line so that you get a really good idea of how I want the movement to go. I just need to find a pen. Just going to use a water-soluble. I'm actually going to have it intersect this line. Don't know which way I like better. I think I like this one. We're not going to do that one. Nice thing, it's because it's water soluble, we can always add the water. Well, we're going to add the water afterwards to make it a little bit invisible, to go back to being invisible so that we don't see that. And just going to thread the needle, and then I'll show you how I do a continuous line for beading so that it doesn't look wonky or chonky, however you would like to describe it. Gone, and I've selected some of my beads. I know I'll have to pull out more. I'm going to add a little bit of those just for a little bit of dramatic effect. I do like how the beads twist and twirl themselves. So I've made my double knot. I don't want to start right at the edge because I'm going to have that 1/4 inch binding go round. So I'm just going to scoop up in here. I'm actually thinking I'm going to start a little bit farther back. Because I've got to add my binding, and that just will complicate it if the beads are so close. Maybe I should be adding my binding next. There's a thought. The reason why I don't want to add the binding right now is I want to see what's going to look better with all the effects. So the longer I wait, the more appropriate of a binding I will choose. So I'm going to start off with my little 2 beads here. I'm going to lay them down, and I'm going to go in and go back out where I started. I'm going to go through my 2 beads, and I'm going to add a couple more. And then I'm not going to go back to the first one, I'm going to go back to the second. And we're just going to keep on with this process of adding 2 and going back 3 until we get to the end there. So one of the first things you need to know about silk ribbon embroidery is you do need a needle with a rather large eye, long and narrow and skinny. And skinny in of itself because the silk ribbon is very, very delicate. You don't use a lot at a time. You just give it a quick thread, and a lot of the time you don't even knot it. You just go through it like such, and that's gonna constitute our knot there. And we need odd numbers because we're actually going to weave it as we go, and apparently unthread it. Okay. So it's not so much about embroidery as it is about weaving. So we go over, under, and that gives us the rose effect. And because it's an odd number, everyone is alternate. And we kind of keep going until we've hidden all of our little stitches that we've using to weave there. And we don't have to pull tight. Looser is actually better in this. There we go, there's one rose. And we just tie it off the same way. There's one little rose done. And I'm not going to do each rose the same color. I've gone and I've finished this. I've added a little couching here, some roses here, just some French knots there, and the beadwork there and there. It's turned out really nice. This is all my leftovers, so I've kind of made a tassel, and we are going to stick it here and add a bit of a brown broomstick, and that will be finished. As you can see, I've went with the purple. I did try the black, but it didn't go. It made a really nice contrasty border, but just too much. It was a little too strong. So I went with a 1/4 inch purple binding, and I'm really pleased with that. So I'm just gonna add the broomstick and sew this on, and it will be done. And I'll show you the final result. So completely finished here. Gonna my bottle of water, and I'm gonna spray off my blue lines. Remember, I was gonna go up here. I didn't know which I liked better, so I went this way. Didn't quite center my broomstick there, and I've got a little bit of the blue showing through for my spider web. Sorry, very brain tired today. I'm just gonna wet those down, and as you can see, as I wet those down, the blue dissipates, dissolves. So there we go, and that is finished. I decided to leave my broom end incredibly wonky. I'm just going to pretend this particular witch, and my daughter will love this idea, that she really enjoys her potions, so she's maybe had a few too many when she's, you know, enchanted her broom and made it. But I'm really pleased with this. It was a fun little project. I enjoyed myself immensely making it. This is something I really enjoy. It's my cup of tea. So give it a thumbs up if you like it.